What's up, everybody? I am here. We are here. It is Wednesday. The week is halfway done. Let's kick it. 6 minutes past the hour, 10 a.m. here in New York City. 53 degrees outside. It's getting warm just for this week only. Coming to you live from Queens, New York. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. What's up? It's your boy Renee, hanging out with my boy John Cena, all in the nude. You see him back there. Can't look away, can you? Can't just look away. How could you ever look away? It's impossible to look away from such a man. Such a man. What's up, everybody? It is Wednesday, halfway done with this week. It's hump day, hump day, hump day. Gonna get your hump on. If I was a camel, I'd be happy. I don't know what any of that meant. I'm just feeling goofy today. And I want you to be here goofy with me. Lots to talk about this morning. As you could see from the title and the thumbnail, what's going on with Marvel? Put yourself in this situation. You have a very highly anticipated show coming out in just a week. X-Men 97 debuts on the 20th, next week. I'm sure you're all hyped about it. Things couldn't be going any better. And then you get fired. And not only that, it is out there in the public that you got fired, let go, whatever, however you want to spin it. And not only that, but your social media has been closed down, or you closed it down yourself because maybe you're embarrassed. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you're up to something that you shouldn't have been doing. Who knows? I don't know, but I'm going to read more and find out with all of you. And I'm, of course, talking about the firing of Beau DeMayo, the very publicly announced firing of Beau DeMayo, literally a week away from the debut of the show that he helped write, helped showrun in this highly anticipated return of the X-Men into the MC, into like the Marvel/Disney universe, bringing back a 90s classic in X-Men 97. So it's very odd. It's very, very odd. But yeah, we'll be talking about that this morning. Other very fascinating, interesting news. Scream 7, you have the original writer or director coming back, and Neve Campbell coming back after an absence for several movies now, or at least a movie. With all the controversy behind Scream 7, that seems to be pushing forward with all of that weird stuff. Ari Aster's new project has a very interesting cast ensemble there. Venom 3 gets moved and has a title change. All that and a whole lot more. Plus, my binge of the week. Every Wednesdays, I go over what I call the binge of the week. Normally, it is based off of a show that I've watched recently, and I'll be talking about it and reviewing it. However, this week's binge of the week has been taken over by all the movies that I've watched literally in the last day. In one day, I've watched 3 movies. Yes, call me crazy, but I did it. And those movies are Drive Away Dolls, Netflix's new Millie Bobby Brown's Damsel, and a new segment that I'm going to be doing every week which is going to be highlighting Japanese cinema, because I've been a huge fan of Japanese cinema for the longest time, going back, geez, maybe early 2000s. And I'm not talking about anime and all that. I mean, obviously, I got into anime much earlier on before that. But actual Japanese movies, Japanese cinema, Japanese film. I've been attending Japanese film festivals. And in recent years, I feel like the public has been enjoying some of the more successful Japanese films, and mainly because they've been recognized by the Oscars. You had this past year with Godzilla Minus One, plus The Boy and the Heron, and the nomination of Wim Wenders' Perfect Days. I don't know if a lot of people saw it, but it has been recognized and something that a lot of people have been talking about. And then previously, in previous years, with movies like Shoplifters, and what was it? What was that movie that was nominated again like a couple of years ago? Hold on. Well, last year we also got, that was hugely popular for certain fans. You had the new Kamen Rider from Takashi Miike, right? And I announced on Mondays, or I talked about on Monday's show about Evil Does Not Exist winning Best Film at the Asia Film Awards. So there's a lot of talk about Japanese film, and I kind of, as someone who has been enjoying Japanese film for a very long time, I want to kind of help the audience, help English American movie lovers get more exposed to Japanese film. So you're going to be hearing me talk about Japanese film a lot during these mornings. I don't know if I'll be doing it every Wednesday or if maybe I'll do it every Friday, but at least once a week, I will be highlighting and reviewing a certain Japanese movie. And you could expect that every week moving on until whatever, until the show ends or I end or something stops me and prevents me from doing all that stuff. But that's basically what we have in store for us this morning. And I thank you for joining in on the ride. As always, like, dislike, spread the word, do all that stuff. The one thing I don't do enough, I don't know, it's my problem. I need to find a way to announce that I'm live every day or every time I'm live. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm just going to simply say I'm live. And whoever cares will have at it. Yeah, but I got to find a way to better announce all that good stuff. All right. So something, just I want to share something that I've recently found out, because it occurred to me that on Sunday when I was live streaming the Oscars with Blake, I don't know if you happen to have watched it or not. If you were there, you know that at the top of the stream, I mentioned that we were having a lot of technical difficulties prior to going live. And one of those major problems was that I was watching the Oscar broadcast through the ABC website. And in order for Blake and I to be synced, I was streaming it for his eyes only. And I wasn't using Discord. I was using this other platform that Blake and I normally have no issues with. When we did the live reactions to the Oscar nominations, I was streaming it on YouTube, and there weren't any issues with that at all. But for some reason, when I was streaming from the ABC website, he couldn't see the video very clearly at all. It was very jumbled, very just like all over the place. Audio came in fine, but for some reason, video was not. But as I was able to broadcast on YouTube, the feed going out to all of you out there was clean, clear. Audio seemed to be okay. I heard that from a viewer that there were dips in audio here and there, but then that was just in the beginning and then it kind of sorted its way out. So I don't know what that means, but it had me going and looking more into my network because, ever since I got Fios, I've been a happy camper. I great speeds, no downtime. Service has been pretty impeccable for me, my experience here. But I'm paying for gigabit internet, right? So I'm supposed to be getting like really great speeds, like at least 900 megabits per second, anywhere between the range of 700 to 900, because it always depends on your neighborhood, your building, all that stuff. But I did a speed test and I was getting 500, 400 to 500. I'm like, wait a minute, that just seems way too low for me. I don't get it. But it was consistent, at least. Like my laptop was getting that. And then I even checked the Wi-Fi on my phone, and even my phone was getting that. So I'm like, all right, at least for Wi-Fi, that's pretty damn strong. I was pretty happy and proud about that. But my laptop is connected to the LAN, so it's directly connected through cable, through the internet cable, like LAN cable. And then, it goes through a router that I've had for a very, very long time. At one point, it was a very well regarded router. It's like a Netgear Nighthawk, whatever you want to call that. So I plugged my laptop directly to my modem, my Verizon modem, and I was getting 900 direct connection. So I'm like, okay, what's going on? Like, why is there such a huge drop off from the router? Now I get it, routers, it's going to split the signal, right? So of course you're going to get a little bit of a slower speed, but not to that extent. So I decided to do more research. And then I was like, wait a minute. I think my router is just too damn old. And the more research I was looking into it, I found out that my router specifically, the ports on the router, they don't fully support the full 100% speed of a gigabit connection. And it's limiting it because it's just, this router was invented before that even came out. This router, I think, came out in 2015. And I think I bought it either within the first year it came out or the year after. So people were still used to like DSL connections, cable connections, nothing like the high speeds we're getting now. So I just found out. It's so funny how I've been with Fios now for several years, like a couple of years, and I'm just now realizing that my router is just not up to snuff to handle the type of speed that I'm subscribing to. And I've been dealing with it for a long time, for what I do here. Like, I rely on the internet. I rely on like great speed. Not that I was live streaming a lot before, but now that I'm doing it this year, the more attention I'm paying to it, I'm like, wait a minute, this doesn't seem right. And it could possibly explain why, Blake could not properly see video on his end, because my speed was just being cut in half, technically. Or, in hindsight, it's lack of a better way without going into so much technical, mumbo jumbo. It was literally being cut in half because my router's too old. And I was like, holy shit. So it looks like it's time for me to invest in a new router. It's been a long time, almost 10 years now since I've had my router. And like I said, my router was specifically not made when these higher speeds was available. So yeah, it's just, I wanted to share that because it's something I just came to this realization with. So maybe I'm going to try to find a way to see how I can connect at least my laptop directly to my modem. And then maybe for now, just have my router on the other port to support the rest of my devices. I don't know what that's going to mean for speed wise, but it's something I'm going to have to kind of fool around and mess around with. So that's my TED Talk. Thank you for listening to my morning tech talk here. You're welcome. Hope you enjoyed that. All right, let's get into some of these headlines this morning. This is the morning of the stream. This is the morning of the stream. Yes, it is the morning of the stream, but this is also the portion of the morning stream where I talk about the recent headlines coming in from pop culture related news, movies, TV, all that stuff. And let's just start off. Let's rip the Band-Aid. Let's get into this crazy news that dropped yesterday. This news dropped yesterday. I saw the notification on my phone, as I do with a lot of these top news and all that. But yeah, it was announced yesterday that Beau DeMayo is fired from X-Men 97, fired from Marvel. And what follows after that is just, for me, very fascinating, very interesting to look into. Because it's one thing if someone gets let go from a project. You know, we've seen it happen within Marvel quite a bit, where someone, you know, is attached to a project and then maybe because of creative differences, they get let go. They change directors or writers, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they have bad blood with Marvel or any studio. I should put that out there, any studio. And then maybe they'll move on to another project and they'll work on that project, right? Or years later, they'll team up with that same studio or whoever and work on something else. But this guy just got completely like dunzo. Even so much so that now his social media is apparently shut down. And again, that could be for anything, embarrassments, maybe, or some sort of TOS that he violated that maybe led to his firing. I mean, it's just so weird. But it was the Hollywood Reporter that broke the news yesterday, so I'm here on the Hollywood Reporter. And yes, it is indeed a Marvel shocker. In an unusual situation on the eve of the project's debut, the writer-producer who worked on Moon Knight and Blade will no longer be promoting the show or moving forward with future seasons. Earlier this month, Beau DeMayo was in the midst of particularly busy time at Marvel Studios. The writer-producer was preparing for the launch of X-Men 97, the Disney Plus series he created as a continuation of the beloved 90s Fox Kids show. Hold on one second, because I just realized that I may have mistyped his name in the title of this episode. There. I just want to make sure I corrected that. So there we go. So yeah, continuing on in this article, DeMayo, a Marvel regular. So again, this is someone who's been with Marvel for a while now. Keep that in mind. Who previously wrote on live action series Moon Knight, as well as early drafts of the company's delayed but still upcoming vampire thriller Blade, had completed writing duties on season 2 of X-Men 97. So not only was he involved in the first season, but he also just finished a draft, or his draft, of the script for season 2 of this animated show that we haven't even seen yet. The public has not yet seen. But it sounds like, you know, Marvel is very high on it right now. Article continues to say that it was lining up press and making plans to attend the show's Hollywood premiere on March 13th. He was even discussing loose ideas for a third season with members of his team. So again, here's someone that is going about his business, going about his career, going off of a high that he just, you know, season 1 of the show that he's responsible for is literally a week away from debuting. He just finished his draft for the second season, and now he's like formulating thoughts on season 3. So this is not a sign. This is not someone who fears that they're going to be losing their job anytime soon, right? This guy is just going. The creative juices are flowing, and it's just on, right? Article continues, but early last week, Marvel and DeMayo suddenly parted ways. His company email was deactivated, and cast and crew were informed he was no longer on the project. DeMayo's Instagram account, once a source for X-Men updates, was deleted. No reason for the firing was given. So, if I were to look up Beau DeMayo, right? Here he is. Let's check out. Let's see Instagram. Instagram. Spell it. All right. Instagram. Here we go. If this is truly him. No, I don't want to sign in. Sorry, this page isn't available. The link you followed may be broken, or the page may have been removed. So it is gone. His Instagram is donezo. Crazy, crazy stuff. So, article continues to say, Marvel had no comment. DeMayo's representatives did not return calls for comment, and emails to the showrunner yielded no response. It was a surprising turn of events on the eve of the show's March 20 debut. Splitting with writers is a normal part of the business for Marvel or any studio. See, this is exactly what I was saying before. However, it is unusual for a top creative on a Marvel project to miss a premiere or cancel press plans last minute, even if they've been shuffled to the side. Most Marvel premieres feature multiple screenwriters walking the red carpet, some of whom had rewritten by others also walking the red carpet. Marvel announced DeMayo's hiring in November 2021. All right, we're going to get into some backstory here. The move was met with some level of excitement as the scribe brought his identity as a gay black man to the project and made it a point in talking to the press about how growing up as the adopted son to white parents with a Korean sister in the South made the X-Men characters and their struggles for acceptance by society feel personal to him, which it does. Reading that backstory, I can see it. You know, I can see how someone like him, with his upbringing and his background, can understand the X-Men storyline, and that could lead to, you know, great storytelling and great just guidance for a group of characters who have experienced, you know, the feeling of being different from everybody. So I like that. I love that story. His silence on social media has been acute as he was a prolific poster, sharing X-Men tidbits as well as shirtless pictures of himself, there you go, at the gym. For a time, he also ran a non-explicit OnlyFans account, all of which inspired the LGBTQ publication Out to declare him the sexy gay Marvel writer and showrunner to know. All right, you go, Beau. But at times, social media had proven a challenge while making the series. Here we go. Let's get to the nitty-gritty here. In May of 2023, DeMayo announced he would be deleting his Twitter account after he was attacked by users accusing X-Men 97 of whitewashing the character Sunspot, with the casting of Brazilian actor Gui Agostini in the role. X-Men 97 continues the story of X-Men the Animated Series, which ran from 92 to 97 and is credited with introducing a generation of children to the mutant characters and priming the pump for the X-Men movies of the early 2000s. A number of the voice actors from the original show are returning, with the nostalgia factor helping propel the first trailer to become the most watched promo for a Disney Plus animated show. DeMayo was among the kids who grew up watching the show, said the showrunner in June of 2022. Anyone who feels different, we all have a Magneto inside of us, and we all have a Charles Xavier. We all have a part of us that wants to burn it all down, and there's a part of us who wants to find the compromise and build it up. And those comics really helped me understand my identity. And that's the end of the article right there. So now there's also another article that Variety wrote about this. So I want to kind of go here and see if they have any other insights about what could have transpired here. Because, like I said, the Hollywood Reporter broke the news, and I'm sure other outlets did more research on that. So let's do Beau DeMayo. Come on. Come on, Variety. Let's see here. And he wrote and produced. Holy cow! What the hell? Get out of here! No.
IP address was used without your knowledge or consent.
No, this is wrong.
That contains
False.
Identity theft
False.
virus.
False.
To unlock the computer, please call support immediately.
Jesus, come on,
Please
get out of
do
here.
not attempt to shut down or restart your computer. Doing that may lead to data loss and identity
Freaking,
theft. The
this is so
computer lock is aimed
stupid.
to stop
Shut
illegal
up.
activity. Please call our support immediately.
Nope, you are all lying. Good job, Variety, for having such spammy type advertising on your site. Excellent work. Stupid. All right. Going back. What an annoying piece of shit. All right. So this article in Variety, they also mentioned that he wrote for Moon Knight, and he helped write some of the script for Blade. His other credits also include Star Trek: Strange New Worlds, Netflix's live action The Witcher, the animated film The Witcher: Nightmare of the Wolf, and 2 animated League of Legends shorts, Absolution and Before Dawn. So this guy has been writing for TV for a while now. So he definitely has a history. That's all they had to say? That's it? That's nuts. Come on, there has to be Mo money, mo problems. Hold on. Let's see here. Yeah, just bear with me for a minute as I'm looking at seeing if I could get any more additional information here. Nope. Looks like everyone is pretty much reporting the same thing over and over again. I mean, it's all very suspect. If you really think about it, it's all very strange, in my opinion. See in here, Op Rocks, nobody knows why. Deadline saying he exited, but it sounds more like a firing to me. Verge, nothing. No public explanation given. Yeah, it's all very strange. All very, very, very strange. I mean, I have some speculation, which, doesn't mean much, but we've seen things like this happen before, especially when it involves social media. And I don't know if it's really a result of backlash for the show, right? I don't know what kind of engagement he had with audiences on, based off of the comments for X-Men 97. But we've seen things like this happen before, like I mentioned, like this next story that I'm going to go over after this one about Gina Carano. If you recall, and it's not just her, there's a lot of other actors, actresses in Hollywood that when they go to social media and they post certain ideas or thoughts or things that they believe in, that usually gets red flags, sends red flags to the studios that they work for, projects that they're working on, and it gets them into trouble, right? And I always encourage, and I appreciate that they are very outspoken about what they believe in. But when you do what you do have to be careful. There is going to be a certain level of accountability, and you may not understand how that can interfere with your workplace. And that's any workplace, really. You know, that's why the whole thing, like the way I've approached things in the workplace was always like no religion, no politics. End of story. Because the minute you open up that door, even just briefly, you just sneak in a little bit, 9 times out of 10, nothing good comes out of it. But I will say this. From what it sounds like to me, there must have been something, some sort of riff DeMayo had with Marvel. Maybe it's whatever extracurricular activities he was involved in outside of the workplace. The fact that he has an OnlyFans account is interesting to me. Again, not that I'm poo-pooing on anyone who goes on OnlyFans. You know, everyone has the right to, you know, get their bag and do it any way they feel possible or they feel necessary. But if he is known for posting, you know, shirtless, you know, pics of himself, very proud of his body, you know, who knows what he was doing on OnlyFans? I wonder if his OnlyFans is still around. You know what? Let's check it out. Let's go to the videotape. All right. Let's see if his OnlyFans is still around. Well, there's some blurred images here from OnlyFans. It's funny how, oh, here we go. Well, it just gives me OnlyFans, but it doesn't give me his account. All right. I'm going to switch over here. I'm going to see. Well, they're just showing me random freaking unnecessary pictures. I regret going to that now. Holy moly. All right. I wonder, can you just go, you know, and it's funny, OnlyFans has been in the news recently when it involves celebrities. If you paid attention to the news, that actress that was on The Sopranos said if it wasn't for OnlyFans, she wouldn't be able to have been paying for her mortgage and supporting her family. You know, so OnlyFans serves a certain purpose for certain people, right? And then, like I said before, I am all about those who want to get their bag any way they can. You know, I don't judge anyone. It is what it is, right? And if you can do it, good for you. Good on you for doing it. But I wonder if Marvel is kind of drawing a line as to how you conduct yourself outside of the workplace. Again, I don't know. I cannot really speak to what it is because I've never worked for Marvel. I've never worked for Disney. However, I did at one point apply for a job at the Disney store, which is technically working for Disney. You have no idea how connected the store is to the Disney company. And I remember they were all about looking a certain way and behaving a certain way and having certain beliefs. You know, I felt, and this was a long time ago. I mean, this was basically back in like the late 90s. I was kind of fresh out of high school, kind of fresh, because I graduated in 95. And I remember being part of that interview process, which was like a group interview. And I hate group interviews. I mean, I feel like everyone there is trying to outdo the other person, which is so annoying. You know, it's kind of like running the gambit of like a battle royal. Everyone's out for each other's throat in that type of environment. And I felt like the odd person out because I wasn't the clean cut, kind of dapper type of person like a lot of them were. I had long hair. It was bleached blonde, but then I had to color it. I had to dye it black for the interview because I knew that they were going to be looking at me very differently. And I was nervous and sweating. And I remember at one point, the dye from my hair was dripping onto the paper that I was looking at. I was like, uh-oh, this is not a good look. But, there is a certain standards at the Disney company. And maybe because of the things that he was involved in or doing outside of work, maybe that's what kind of led to some backlash internally. But this also sounds like he may have said something or done something bad, whether internally or externally, because people get, like I said before, people get fired from projects all the time. But rarely does a firing lead to you deleting your own Instagram account. So what happened? Is he involved in some Jonathan Majors level type of trouble? And Marvel learning from their problems with Jonathan Majors that, hey, let's just nip this in the bud now before it gets out of control? I don't know. It's kind of hard to say. It is very unusual and it is very strange. And, I could sit here all day speculating left and right about everything. But what it looks to me, there's a lot of optics involved here. Again, the firing was, it wasn't Marvel or Disney themselves leaking this, or maybe they did, but it was broke, by a very well-known publication. And, Disney is not commenting, Marvel's not commenting, DeMayo's side, his people there aren't commenting. So it sounds like a very sensitive subject with those who are involved, for sure. But it sounds to me, again, just speculating, just based off of other things that I've seen happen, that it's either there is something that he did or he was involved in, or something that he said externally that just didn't gel right with Marvel or Disney, or something happened internally that led to some sort of rift between all parties involved, which led to this abrupt firing. It's hard to say. I'm sure we'll learn more about it in the coming weeks, especially when the show debuts next week. I'm sure we're definitely going to hear more about this stuff. At one way or another, more news about this is going to come out. But yeah, this is very, very unfortunate. I don't know if it means that the show's tainted right now. What's going to happen after season 1 will be the big question, especially since he turned in his draft already for season 2, whether or not they go forward with that, or what I could already see now, they're just going to hire somebody else to maybe take a look at it, maybe do some rewrites so that they don't necessarily have to credit DeMayo if they don't want to. They're going to change it up enough that, maybe they'll leave him on as co-writer or contributor to avoid any kind of legal problems later on down the line. But it is just very strange. Optics wise, it is very strange. And of course, it's going to lead to a lot of speculation, hence like me, like what I'm doing right now. But something big went down, or he's involved in something big. Because like I said, you can be someone who's very proud of your work, and maybe the company you work for just doesn't like it. And maybe there's some back and forth, and then you could get let go, you could get fired. Happens to all of us. We've all been in a situation like that. But for someone to not only get fired, but then to kind of delete their online presence in a way, that's something that is a whole other level. Maybe he's doing it because he doesn't want to hear from people. I mean, apparently he was already hearing from a lot of people, some backlash of those who have some qualms with the upcoming 97 series. So maybe he just didn't want to hear it. But if you're someone who's proud of your work and who doesn't care, why would you do that? It's just very odd. It's very odd. So I'm curious what all of you think about this, or maybe a lot of you just don't care either. That could be very well true too. But it is very unfortunate to see something like this happen, especially to someone who appears to have been like a prolific creator and involved with a lot of projects. So we'll see what happens, and we'll see if anything else in the future comes out about it all. All right. Like I said, this also leads to another piece of news from someone who also experienced some backlash online that led to a termination, and that's Gina Carano. So we do have a little update about Gina Carano. Back here on The Hollywood Reporter, Gina Carano finds new management team amid Disney lawsuit. The former Mandalorian actress is in the midst of a suit against Disney alleging wrongful termination. Gina Carano is in the, they just repeated it. Okay. The actress had been repped by UTA, but was dropped in 2021 around the time of the Disney firing. Now Carano will be repped by Rob Weston's Straightwire Entertainment Group, and the actress adds that she's working on a new television series. Rob Weston is the English gentleman who remains calm in any environment and has deep knowledge of the industry, as well as a really unique and keen eye for art and storytelling. I feel relieved to push the refresh button in signing on with Rob, and I am as ambitious as ever in this new chapter of my life and career. We are already actively working on a new television series that I am ecstatic about, that is unlike anything I've done thus far, and are actively attracting creatives from all over who are excited to collaborate, Carano said in a statement. Gina Carano is not only an exceptional talent, but a wonderful human being, and we are thrilled to be joining her in the next chapter of her career, Weston said. So this goes on about why Carano was fired, all mainly because of social media and her thoughts and views and opinions that she put out there. And it just recaps that in early February, Carano filed a lawsuit against Disney and Lucasfilm alleging discrimination. So all of that stuff. And it just gives a little brief history on her career after being a UFC fighter. So I don't really have any additional thoughts here on this. It's just interesting that this is going on, and it's also interesting that we haven't really heard much about the lawsuit at all. I'm not expecting to hear much about that unless a big major thing happens. But good on Carano, I guess, for picking herself up and being able to do things. I never had a problem with her as an actress. I mean, I did feel like she was flat earlier on in her career. I remember seeing her in Fast and Furious and seeing her in the first Deadpool movie, and how her acting chops was just not there yet. But on The Mandalorian, it looked like she was improving, and I actually really liked her character a lot. And I think out of all of this, that's the one thing that I'm disappointed in, is that we just no longer get to see that character anymore, which fit really well in that universe and in that story, in that series. But it is what it is. And I just wish her the best. And there you have it. That's all I have to say about Gina Carano. In more uplifting news, who remembers Jake Lloyd? Jake Lloyd. I have a very funny story about Jake Lloyd too, that I may have shared in the past, but I will share after I read this article. But in recent history, in the past year or two, it was reported that Jake Lloyd is not in a good state. I believe he's a recovering addict. Last pictures I saw of him, he just didn't look healthy at all. And, it's just another one of those cases of maybe another child actor leading down the wrong path. And of course, the speculation was that because of the Phantom Menace and the backlash of that movie, that he fell under depression, and all of that stuff you can speculate after something like that. But a new article was released yesterday that is from his mom. They interviewed his mom, and the mom provided additional details about Jake Lloyd currently right now. So I'm here on Scripps News. I used to work for a company that was owned by Scripps a long time ago. PQ in the hizzy. Yes, that is Anakim. Anakim is actually the African version of Anakin. And that is the regional version of the Phantom Menace there. And it is produced by the family of Prince Akeem, better known from his role in Coming to America. So there you go. Mother of Star Wars child actor details his mental health struggles. Jake Lloyd, who played a young Anakin Skywalker, disappeared from the public eye after being cast in The Phantom Menace at 8 years old. May will mark 25 years since Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Can you believe it's been 25 years since that movie came out? Jeez. Many fans are already celebrating the silver anniversary thanks to a fresh round of published interviews with cast members, a new poster, and news the film will soon be returning to theaters. Noticeably absent from the recent coverage, however, is one key member of the Phantom Menace cast, Jake Lloyd. And here is, look how cute this kid was. Look at that face. This is the same face I saw at E3, and I think this was at E3 that I was at, that I have stories to share about him. So I'll get back to that in a minute. The child actor chosen over 3,000 others to play pod racing phenom and Jedi to be Anakin Skywalker, or according to PQ, Anakin, in George Lucas's space opera turned 35 last week. Since the movie, Lloyd has been mostly out of the spotlight, his life largely a mystery to his devout fans. In an exclusive interview with Scripps News, his mother, Lisa Lloyd, provided a glimpse into Jake's personal saga in the years since appearing in that galaxy far, far away, sharing her son's turbulent struggle with mental illness, family tragedy, and the reason she's more hopeful today than she's been in years. She also wanted to set the record straight about what her son really thinks about Star Wars. Lisa noted that her son is aware that she is speaking out to tell his story. Here's a quote. Jake started having some trouble in high school, Lisa said, recalling the time that she first noticed her son's personality changing. He started talking about realities. He didn't know if he was in this reality or a different reality. I didn't really know exactly what to say to that. Sounds to me like he had a hard time adjusting after being involved in such a production like Star Wars. When you're 8 years old and you have the whole world staring at you, I can kind of see how that could be a problem. One day after school, Lisa asked her son if he'd finished his homework. Quote, and he was like, well, I don't even know if I need to do it. I don't know which reality I'm in. And I'm like, well, you're in my reality today, so you have to do your homework. Lisa took Jake to a doctor who suggested he might have bipolar disorder. They tried different medications to treat his symptoms, but she says nothing worked. Jake graduated from high school in 2007 and was looking forward to attending classes that fall at Columbia College in Chicago. His brief enrollment at the private art school didn't go great. He missed a lot of classes, and he was telling me that people were following him. Uh-oh. She could sense a downward spiral. Jake would sometimes mention seeing people with black eyes staring at him on the street and having late-night conversations with Daily Show host Jon Stewart through his TV. This poor kid is definitely, it sounds like a lot of schizophrenic behavior. He didn't tell us he was hearing voices at the time, but he was. After a semester and a half, Jake left college in March 2008 to live with Lisa in Indiana. A series of appointments with therapists and psychiatrists eventually led to a diagnosis: paranoid schizophrenia. What did I just say? My God, I should be a doctor. You blew it! All right, sorry. When they finally told him, it totally threw him off into an even worse depression. Lisa said it was really hard. This goes on talking about schizophrenia, a neurological condition called anosognosia That sounds like a planet on Star Wars, actually. And also go Noshia. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be laughing at this. Complicated efforts to treat Jake. The condition causes a patient to be unaware of or unconsciously in denial about their symptoms. This is sounding to be very depressing. I feel so bad for this kid. It talks about his self-medication and all this stuff. Lisa hired an attorney to get her son out of lockup, but Jake wasn't responding because, what was it, in 2015, on a solo trip from Florida to Canada, Jake was under arrest and facing multiple charges after deputies said he led them on a multi-county chase before crashing his car. Jesus, this poor kid. PQ thinks I'm drunk. Maybe I am. Or maybe I just need more coffee. We're moving on in this article. It just sounds like Jake has had a hard time with keeping up with appointments with doctors and just having a real time struggling with everything. In March of 2023, Jake suffered what his mom calls a full-blown psychotic break. It happened as she was driving him home after picking up food at McDonald's. Lisa noted that Jake was already having a bad day. He said he wanted to turn the car off, and he turned the car off in the middle of 3 lanes, and we were in the middle of the lane. Why is he driving? That's my question. If you know someone has problems like that, why are you letting him drive? That doesn't sound healthy to me. There was a lot of yelling and screaming. Driver stuck on traffic jam, called 911. The police got there and they asked Jake some questions. He said he was talking to them, but none of it made sense. It was all word salad. And then he was admitted to the hospital that day. He's currently about 10 months into an 18-month stay. Lisa hopes it will be a significant turning point for Jake, knowing that he's been showing remarkable improvement with the help of therapy and treatments. Quote, "He's doing much better than I expected. He is relating to people better and becoming a little bit more social, which is really nice. It's kind of like having more of the old Jake back because he was always been incredibly social until it became schizophrenic. Jake is also starting to understand more about his condition and the importance of consistently taking his medication. For his birthday, Lisa and Jake went to the movies and filled up on popcorn. Oh, look, they watched Wonka together. That's really nice. He really loved it. That was one of the things that he couldn't do when he was off his medication was watch movies. He just didn't have the attention span for it." Here's the Star Wars portion of the article. As for Star Wars, his mother said Jake is still a huge fan of the movies and shows. Most recently, he's been watching the episodes of Ahsoka on Disney+. Lisa even gave Jake an action figure of the lead character Ahsoka Tano last week as a birthday present. He loves all the new Star Wars stuff, she says. People think Jake hates Star Wars. He loves it. Lisa is also eager to dispel what she says is a common misconception that an avalanche of negative reaction to Phantom Menace drove Jake to quit acting and contributed to his mental illness. It would have happened anyway, according to Lisa, pointing to a history of schizophrenia on his biological father's side of the family. "I believe that it was genetic, and his psychiatrist also agrees that Jake was going to become schizophrenic." She also insists that in 1999, Jake was largely shielded from the toxic vitriol swirling around the prequel film. "I protected him from the backlash. He was just riding his bike outside, playing with his friends. He didn't know, he didn't care. Everybody makes such a big deal about that, and it's rather annoying to me because Jake was a little kid when that came out, and he didn't really feel all that stuff because I didn't let him online." Lisa acknowledged that high school kids would sometimes bully Jake over Star Wars, something he mentioned in past interviews, but she says walking away from Hollywood had more to do with family drama at home. People say he quit because of Star Wars. Well, that's not true. It didn't have anything to do with Star Wars. It had more to do with our family, and we were going through divorce. Things were unsettling and kind of rough, and Jake didn't seem to be having a lot of fun auditioning anymore. This goes on to say that he still likes wearing Star Wars shirts. And if Jake one day could star in another Star Wars project, Lisa said that's not something in the cards right now. Jake loved filming Star Wars. He had so much fun. I would love for him to get well enough to be able to do a little bit of something, and I'm sure he would maybe like to do that. He could at this point, but you never know how much he's going to improve, so we'll just see. And that's pretty much what the article says there. Look, I feel bad for this kid. You know, I don't think the backlash from Phantom Menace and all that contributed to this stuff, according to what I just read. But I'm sure it doesn't help. You know, and it's just really unfortunate. The thing is, and I think the one main thing I want to highlight here is that the internet is fucking cruel. You know, when you have a group of people, especially within a fandom, that doesn't like something, nowadays, especially now, you know, this movie came out in the late 90s, so online stuff wasn't huge yet, but it was there. But it's not anything like it is now. But people online can be really cruel. Dare I say that a lot of people out there are just big bitches, really. You know, where if they don't like something, they attack the person involved with it. And it becomes this big war and all that. Maybe this is exactly what happened to DeMayo with X-Men 97, right? And gets to the point where people can't take it anymore. You know, but I remember there was the major backlash there, and I unfortunately was even part of that, which leads to my E3 story. And I remember I was at E3 again. If you know, I used to work in the video game industry, and I was at E3. This was either the first year or second year that it finally came back to Los Angeles after it was in Atlanta. And I was at the Activision booth because they were promoting the Star Wars pod racing game. Go back to that picture I showed before of the young Jake Lloyd playing Nintendo 64, the pod racing game. And the big draw at the Activision booth at the time was, hey, Jake Lloyd is here, right? So this was 99 for sure, because it was the year that they were promoting all that stuff. And I remember standing there with my friend, good friend, who I'm still really good friends with now. And we were looking at Jake. And Jake just had this look on his face like, I don't know if it was boredom, or I don't know if it was fear or confusion. And I remember telling my friends, like, look at this poor kid. This kid has no idea what's happening right now. This kid has no idea what is in store for him. And I remember at that time, I did feel bad for him. Because, you know, he's a young kid, man. You know, you get cast in this gigantic role. Huge role. And people are basically shitting on your performance. And I was a part of it. You know, the whole yippee and this is pod racing and all that crap. Are you an angel? I mean, worst pieces of dialogue I've ever heard. And that's all Lucas's fault. That's all George Lucas's fault. If anything, blame George Lucas for that. But, you know, Jake wasn't the only one getting all this backlash. It was also Ahmed Best for his portrayal of Jar Jar Binks. I mean, he was hired to do that. And then the next two movies, of course, you had Hayden Christensen getting a lot of shit. But it's not their faults. They did what they were told. That's what actors do. And they do their best. Look, Natalie Portman was in this series and she turned out fine. You know, because she's a professional actress. You know, these other people just didn't have that background and, I guess, training to be an actor and to be able to deal with a lot of this stuff too. However, look at where we are now. And I've witnessed this. Every time now Ahmed Best comes up on stage or appears somewhere, nothing but love. So much so that he is now back in the Star Wars family Like more so with his new character, his Jedi character, who first debuted in a game show that they had and then was featured in an episode of The Mandalorian. So his character is indeed canon, which is fantastic. And I'm so happy for him. And he may, based off of rumors I read, be involved in another Star Wars project in the future, which is fantastic. Hayden Christensen. Every time he's back at a convention or whatever, nothing but love. People go nuts for this guy now. So much so that it resurrected his interest and love for Star Wars that he came back during the Obi-Wan series and then also appeared in Ahsoka. And his acting has been better than ever. Right? So I would love it if Jake can get well enough for him to at least make an appearance at one of these conventions. Because I guarantee you there's going to be nothing but a sweltering of love being thrown at him. Especially with people understanding more so now what he's been going through. And who knows, maybe it's that kind of love he may need in order for him to get better. You know, I feel bad for this kid. I really do. And it's not just him. We've heard stories about this before with a lot of child actors. Not everyone has that ability to cope and deal with a lot of fame and the backlash that comes with fame. I mean, we've heard a lot of tragic stories from child actors from like the 80s and 90s and what they've gone through, right? Especially if they're a little bit different. You know, that's why these days I refrain from calling out actors, actresses, people involved in anything creative. Because you have to look at the bigger picture, right? And just because you didn't like a certain character doesn't mean you have to target the person behind it. Because 9 times out of 10, it's probably not their own fault. It's because of what they were told to do and how they were told to portray the character. You know, blame the creatives behind it all. Blame the writers. Blame the dialogue person. Blame the director. You know, but at the same time, no one goes out there with the goal of making a bad movie, regardless of who it is and regardless of what you think. Everyone goes out there with intentions of making something that they're hoping people will enjoy. At the end of the day, that's the truth there. Maybe with the exception of Uwe Boll. I feel like he goes out there just to piss people off purposely. I don't know. I could be wrong. But most of the time, people go out there, they make things in hopes to entertain people. Yeah, and if you don't like it, you don't like it. That's fair. But don't attack the people involved in it. What does that get you? And we only see that really coming out within the fandoms. Your Star Wars fandoms, your Marvel fandoms, your DC fandoms, even like Harry Potter, Doctor Who, Star Trek. You name it, it's there. Always. And, you know, the internet doesn't help. Because you have all your keyboard warriors, all your internet tough guys, people behind the monitor, feeling that they could say whatever they want. You know, just be mindful and careful on how it could affect people. Because it may not have contributed to Jake's mental health, but I'm sure it didn't help. So that's just all I wanted to say about that. And why I wanted to bring it up. All right, let's move on to some other news here. I mean, we're getting late into the morning, and I still have some movies to talk about. So, Venom 3 gets a new title, and moves up release to October. Tom Hardy is back in the Marvel character in Kelly Marcel's third film in the Sony franchise. The latest installment in Columbia's Pictures' Tom Hardy-led Venom franchise now has an official title and an earlier release date. Venom: The Last Dance. Last dance. Last chance for love. This is my last dance. Romance tonight. Venom: The Last Dance hits theaters October 25. Sony announced Tuesday, starring Hardy, Juno Temple, and Chiwetel Ejiofor. The film, I wonder if Chiwetel's character is the character he played in Doctor Strange. Could you imagine? It's Baron Mordo. Like all of a sudden, oh, what happened to Mordo? Oh, here he is. He's now in Venom. It wouldn't be the craziest thing, I tell you. The film has been untitled. Had been untitled. Oh, okay, it was previously untitled and now moves up 2 weeks from its previous release date of November 8. In addition to helming the feature, Marcel wrote the script and with the story credited to herself and Hardy. Hardy, Marcel, Avi Arad, good old Avi Arad. You keep going, buddy. Matt Tomlak, Amy Pascal, and Hutch Parker serve as producers. Let's see here. Third Venom film to hit theaters this year. The pre-Halloween space has worked out nicely for the franchise. The first movie surpassed 850 million globally, while the sequel crossed the 500 million mark worldwide. Also, you should note that the second may not sound like it did a lot of money, but it also came out still at a time where not a lot of people are going back to theaters. I always have to say that because that is a huge significance. Hardy took to Instagram in November to announce that the film, billed as the final one in the series, had resumed production after taking a break due to last year's actor strike. Project had initially been planned for a 2024 release, but was later moved to November on account of labor stoppage. In his November post, Hardy referred to the film as, quote, Last Dance, and added that the work doesn't feel as hard when you love what you do and when you know you have great material and the support at all sides of a great team. Venom: The Last Dance is the latest title in the Sony Pictures universe of Marvel characters. It follows Sony's release of the ever so loved Madam Web, which stars Dakota Johnson, Sydney Sweeney, and blah, 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 this and that. And also, we should also note that Kraven is also coming out this year too. So there you go. Venom is moving. New title, Last Dance. Let's go. I don't know what's going to happen to it. I'm sure it's going to be interesting regardless. In other comic book related movie news, Batman Part 2 has been delayed to 2026. So how about that? The Batman Part 2 is flying off to a new date. The film will now open October 2nd in 2026. That's a full year back from its previous date. Batman 2 wasn't the only notable change made to Warner Brothers' release calendar on Tuesday. The Maggie Gyllenhaal directed The Bride, starring Christian Bale, will take Batman 2's old date of October 3rd, 2025. Barry Levinson's gangster pick Alto Nights is being delayed to November 24th to March 21st, 2025, and Paul Thomas Anderson's untitled star-studded event pick has landed an August 8, 2025 release date. All of the titles will be offered in IMAX. The sequel to Matt Reeves' Batman was first announced at CinemaCon in April 2022. In August of that year, Mattson Tomlin boarded the co-write, the Reeves, and in late January 2023, DC Studios' James Gunn and Peter Safran gave the film a title and date of October 3rd, 2025. DC insiders say the delay is related to last year's strikes. The Batman enjoyed the second best opening of the pandemic with $134 million domestically, on its way to a global haul of $770.3 million. And it launched a new franchise with Colin Farrell's The Penguin getting his own Max series. Reeves is developing an Arkham Asylum-focused show that morphed out of an earlier idea for a series focused on Gotham Police Department. Blah, 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 it goes on and on and on. And then it talks about the other movies that were previously mentioned. PQ Rachel stole Batman's date. I don't know if Rachel had anything to do with it, but sure. That sounds good. The rumor on the streets from what I've read and heard is, yes, the change is due mainly because of the strikes, which delayed a lot of projects. But here's the funniest thing I read. It's also been rumored that Warner Brothers is having a hard time finding lot space to film the movie. So hear me out on this one. So what some people are saying, some people within the know, right? They're saying that because of the strikes, it delayed a lot of productions. Obviously, that we know. Then, when things were starting to pick back up, a lot of productions started booking up all the sound stages and all the production spaces. So much so that when these guys started to get things back on track, there was no studio space available. And they're having a hard time finding space to rent. That's showbiz, guys, I guess. But it's interesting to hear kind of the back end about things like that. You know, the behind the scenes stuff that you don't think about or you don't know. So the Batman is delayed because they just don't have a space to film it. You can't, that's it. End of story. So take that as you will. In other movie news, another big piece of news that dropped that had a lot of people talking online yesterday was about Scream 7 and the return of Neve Campbell to the series. Back here on The Hollywood Reporter, Scream 7 back on track with Neve Campbell returning. The seventh installment faced multiple setbacks in recent months, including the firing of a star, the departure of another, and the exit of a director. In dramatic turn of events, Neve Campbell is returning to the world of Scream, the latest twist for a franchise that just several months ago appeared to be on the ropes. Campbell's return is particularly noteworthy as she sat out Scream 6 over a salary dispute with producer Spyglass. Campbell announced on Instagram that in addition to her return, franchise godfather Kevin Williamson will direct. Williamson is the creator of the franchise, penning the script to Wes Craven's original, as well as Scream 2 and Scream 4. Guy Busick, who wrote 2022's Scream and Scream 6, will take over writing duties from James Vanderbilt, who is busy directing the feature Nuremberg. The seventh installment of Scream has faced multiple setbacks, including losing star Jenna Ortega, the high-profile firing of star Melissa Barrera, and the exit of director Christopher Landon. The addition of Campbell adds new life to the feature, as her character Sidney Prescott had been the series' heartbeat since the first installment. In 2022, when announced talks had broken down over pay, she said in a statement, "As a woman, I have had to work extremely hard in my career to establish my value, especially when it comes to Scream. I felt the offer that was presented to me did not equate to the value I have brought to the franchise." Filmmaking trio Radio Silence revitalized the franchise with 2022's Scream, which featured Campbell. 14 months later, they released Scream 6, which broke the series record for biggest opening weekend with a $44.5 million opening. Scream 6 starred Scream survivors Melissa Barrera, Jasmine Savoy Brown, Mason Gooding, and Jenna Ortega, along with returning franchise stars Hayden Panettiere and Courtney Cox. Radio Silence will executive produce this film, meaning Scream 7, with producers including Vanderbilt and alongside his Project X entertainment partners William Sherrock and Paul Neinstein. So, I mean, look, obviously the article continues on and on and on after that. This movie has had a lot of problems. And this article did cover a lot of that stuff. You had the firing of Barrera, again because of social media posts, and was a major backlash to the fandom of Scream. You know, people were up in arms, while there were some people who were just like, well, that's fine because we didn't find her that great anyway. But I think overall, most people were very disappointed and very angry about that. Because of that firing, that led Jenna Ortega to leave the project because she didn't agree with that. And then because of losing 2 stars, Landon was like, I'm out. And I'm sure they had creative differences also because of all that. So in this move, it sounds like Spyglass was like, you know what? We're desperate. We need to get back on track with this. Neve, what do you want? We'll give it to you. We need you. And if we have you, then maybe we could land a good director or OG director back into the mix. And that sounds like what happened. You know, and I saw people who loved the Scream franchise were extremely happy because everyone wanted Neve back. People were disappointed that she wasn't in the last Scream. Now, I'm not a big Scream person. I've watched the first one, I've watched the second one, and I kind of fell off after that. So I don't have a horse in the race here at all. I don't have any connections or love for this franchise. But I follow the discourse, I follow the reactions and online talk and everything. And people were getting excited about the Scream franchise all over again when Scream came back. You know, regardless of what people thought of Barrera or Jenna Ortega or whatever the case is, people were excited. And I feel like a younger generation was getting back into the Scream franchise because they weren't exposed to it previously. But there was a major discourse when Neve Campbell didn't return for the last one. So now with her back, a lot of those same fans are now extremely excited and happy for all that. Plus, how can you not be happy when the guy who pretty much shepherded this whole thing into existence, Kevin Williamson, who worked with Craven, is back in the mix again. So we could be possibly going back to some stuff like going back to roots, stuff that people are familiar with. And obviously this person is very familiar with working with Campbell on all this stuff. So I think if you look at the bigger overall picture, this may be good for the franchise moving forward, but with a major asterisk next to it. Because again, it just screams of desperation. And Spyglass now totally folded. And Neve Campbell should be happy. She's like, you know what? I know my worth. And if you're not going to give it to me, I'm out. So I am very curious what the conclusion was, what the final offer was. Because like I said, when you're desperate and you're riding on the high of this franchise and then now having all of this backlash and things that happen, you need to pick things back up. And what better way to do it than bringing back a beloved character, an actress back into the fold, and, as the article said, the godfather of the series. So we'll see what happens. You know what? It might be time for me to kind of reintroduce myself to the whole Scream franchise because I didn't know anything about like the Hayden Panettiere character, but a lot of people were excited that she came back. No one ever truly dies in this movie, with the exception of a few. So it's always interesting to see people come back. And this is one of those legacy franchises that's been around that kind of still has that formula of like the whodunit mystery thriller, horror mystery thriller, right? And they're the one that kind of shepherded that whole genre into the mix, because this also spawned like kind of copycat franchises like I Know What You Did Last Summer, things like that. So it's good to see that this is still going strong, and I'm curious as to see what they're going to come up with the next Scream 7 there. But if you're a fan of Scream, I'm curious if this news made you happy or if you're still upset about how things turned out with all the recent stuff. All right. Next, Ari Aster. Again, if you know, you know. I love Ari Aster, huge fan. Always excited for when his next movie is going to come out. His next project has an amazing cast so far. Joaquin Phoenix, Emma Stone, Pedro Pascal to star in Ari Aster's Eddington for A24. And I love that Aster is still with A24. I feel like he is one of the creators that helped bring A24 to the forefront and into the fold and into the populace. And because of him, I am so grateful. But also, along with those guys, Austin Butler, Luke Grimes, and Clifton Collins Jr. round out the cast for the feature that begins production this week. All of these folks are among the performers set to star in the feature that A24 will finance and produce. Luke Grimes, Deirdre O'Connell, Michael Ward, and Clifton Collins Jr. are also set to appear in the movie, like I said before. Aster is directing Eddington from his own script that centers on a small town in New Mexico. Centers on a small town New Mexico sheriff with lofty aspirations. Two-time Oscar-nominated cinematographer Darius Khondji will lend the title that Aster and Lars Nudsden, I really am drunk this morning, are producing through their company Square Peg. A24 has released all three of Aster's previous films, beginning with Hereditary, Midsommar, and then last year's Beau is Afraid, which was one of my favorite movies of last year. And we were treated to this nice little image that A24 posted there. So I love that Aster is working with Joaquin Phoenix again. I love that we get to see him work with Emma Stone and Pedro Pascal, Austin Butler. And from what I hear, this movie is kind of a little bit of like a Western vibe to it. So that in itself is fascinating to me. Now, knowing Ari Aster, there's going to be some interesting twists and turns in the story, right? Which could lead to some horrific or thrilling moments. So I'm very curious about this, and I'm very happy about it. So I can't wait to find out. Along with the news from Ari Aster's new project, we may know what Nolan is working on next. And Nolan may be remaking The Prisoner. Here on Dark Horizons, Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer swept the Oscars Sunday night, with many now wondering what is next for this celebrated filmmaker. Unlike some other directors, Nolan is famous for directing one movie at a time, with nothing else lying in the wings in wait that has his name attached and is begging for his attention. So what could be next? According to Variety, one of the most frequent guesses right now is a film reconception of the influential 1960s British mystery thriller TV series The Prisoner. The 17-episode series followed Patrick McGugan as number 6, an unnamed British intelligence agent abducted and imprisoned in a mysterious coastal village after resigning from his position. The residents consist of hundreds of people from all walks of life and cultures. Most are captives, some are guards, and all are under constant surveillance. It almost sounds like Logan's Run to me, in a way, if you remember that old movie from back in the 80s. 80s or 70s, I don't remember. Any attempts to escape are fatal. Nolan was attached to the project in 2009, but the project disappeared. AMC shortly after released a reconception of the work as a miniseries in 2009 starring Jim Caviezel, wow, Ruth Wilson, and Sir Ian McKellen. 15 years later, is Nolan back around to it? Other sources say he has already begun writing a new screenplay. Now the award season is behind him. If this comes true, this won't be the first time that Nolan did his own version of something that was already done. Many people may not be aware of this, but his movie Insomnia, that came out ages ago, before Nolan became hugely popular, was a remake of a British movie that came out, I believe, in the 60s or 70s, I think. It actually starred a Skarsgård. I believe it was Stellan Skarsgård who starred in the original Insomnia. But Nolan adapted it and rebooted it and remade it and made his own version of it, starring Al Pacino and Robin Williams. And it's funny, too, because now that I think of it, this didn't occur to me until now. It's funny how it was Pacino who announced his Best Picture win at the Oscars for Oppenheimer. And it's kind of like a reuniting of the two after Insomnia, after they worked together on Insomnia. But yeah, I mean, look, whatever Nolan does next, it's going to be very highly anticipated, and I'm going to be extremely excited to check it out. So I can't wait for that. Let's see. Chris Pratt's sci-fi thriller Mercy will be opening in theaters in August of 2025. Directed by action maestro Timur Bekmambetov, the Amazon MGM Studios film also stars Rebecca Ferguson. Huge fan of that. Love me some Rebecca Ferguson. Timur Bekmambetov's Mercy is looking to add some sizzle to the late summer box office next year. Amazon's MGM Studios will release a sci-fi action thriller in theaters nationwide August 15, 2025. Chris Pratt, Rebecca Ferguson, fresh off Dune Part 2, star in the movie, which is expected to get a full global rollout. The script is from Marco Van Bell, stars Pratt as a detective in the near future who finds himself accused of a violent crime and having to prove his innocence in a society where capital crime is on the rise. Interesting premise. I can see it. But if any of you are wondering what Chris Pratt is up to next, there you go. There you have it. Some little tidbits here and there on stuff that I've read. bringing it whole back to Al Pacino with that very awkward announcement of Best Picture at the Oscars. He said that it was the choice of the producers to kind of approach it that way. I feel like he's kind of covering his own ass. I feel like if you go back to that moment, there's this funny thing that happened. I didn't even catch it during the live broadcast because I was too busy laughing. But when he said, "Oh, it's looks like Oppenheimer," and then people were just like laughing, but they weren't realizing that he was actually announcing the winners. And he's like, producer, blah, 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 that. And then as people were finally starting to realize that, oh, Oppenheimer won, and they're clapping, and then they start, the camera started panning to the audience, you hear him just faintly in the background say, "What happened?" It's the funniest shit. If you ever go on YouTube and look for that moment. And I yesterday it was brought to my attention, and I kind of replayed it, and I couldn't stop. It made the moment even funnier, because here you have like this 80-year-old guy on stage, just like, "Hey, it's probably trying to be funny or do his own thing. Maybe he's a little drunk." But he's like, "Oh yeah, Oppenheimer," and then he's already wondering like why everyone's reacting weird. And he's like, "Hey, what happened?" I don't know. For me, I couldn't get enough of that. That was just so funny. Also sticking with Oscar news, it looks like this year's Oscars averaged 19.5 million viewers, which is the most watched in 4 years. Simple explanation about that: Barbie. People who aren't usually interested were watching the show to see what Barbie was going to do, if anything. And of course, to see Ryan Gosling's performance for I'm Just Ken. And I'm sure also to check out Billie Eilish's song. That's mainly the reason why people went to watch this, more so than previous years. Plus, I'm sure there's also people who were interested to see if Nolan was going to win for Oppenheimer. What else do we have here? Oh, speaking of upcoming projects, it is interesting when you look at the current slate for this year, next year, and beyond. We don't know what Steven Spielberg is working on just yet. So someone was over at the Oscars talking to him, interviewing him and all. And, they said like, "Oh, you don't have any projects on down the line. Is there anything that you're working on that you can talk to?" And he wasn't really saying much. So for some reason, this interviewer asked him about Ready Player 2. We all know Spielberg directed Ready Player 1. And he said, "Oh, Ready Player 2 is going to happen. But Spielberg is looking to produce that movie. It doesn't sound like he's going to be looking to direct it." But the fact that he basically kind of said that Ready Player 2 is in the works is fascinating to me. Because I'll say this: even though Ready Player 2, the book, was not on the same level as the first book, it was good, but it wasn't as great as the first one. There's this one particular part in the book, though, I would love to see them do on the big screen. And spoiler alert for those of you who've never read the book, but I have to talk about this because ever since I read that book, which is years now, I feel like it's like another lifetime ago. In my mind, I've just been picturing how this could all happen if it was brought to the big screen. I even was thinking of doing a video, kind of like, and finding someone to help me animate it somehow. But there's this moment in the book where, the main character there, the name is escaping me. He is, what is it? Farcical, Marsical, Marzipan. I don't know. The FaZe Clan, whatever the main character's name is. I'm so bad with names. But the main guy, right? Just like what Ready Player One was, it was a lot of like these throwbacks to like, 80s, 90s pop culture. And, Ready Player 2 is no exception to that. And it's mostly, the guys that were wronged from the first one trying to get back at this guy. And there's this moment where he has to come across an army of princes. What are you talking about? Prince. the singer, the rock and roll star, the pop culture sensation, Prince, is featured very heavily in this book. And it's because he forms an army of princes. Not this guy, the opposing guy. Those who are out to get the main character here. And this chapter, I believe it was called Prince and the Revolution or The Revolution, blew my mind. Because you have all the variations of Prince. Think about it. Purple Rain Prince, Doves Cry Prince, Prince with the yellow outfit with his ass sticking out, artist formerly known as Prince. Yet all the variations of Prince forming an army going against this guy. And I'm just like, how fucking fascinating is that? It's like, to this day, one of the best things I've read in a while. And I would love to see how they're going to interpret that onto the big screen. Unfortunately, Prince is no longer with us, right? But it would be fascinating to see if they could get the rights to somehow formulate this whole chapter in movie form. It's the best thing ever. PQ, can we get Dave Chappelle Prince for this movie? No, because Dave Chappelle is too bulky now for Prince. If Dave Chappelle came back as Prince, it's like Prince on steroids. We all know Prince ain't that big. But that would be funny, though. That would be funny. But that, I don't know. For whatever reason, I would just love to see that if they go that route for this new movie. But yeah, it's again, if you haven't read the book, it's not the greatest story. It's not anything close to how Ready Player One was. But maybe if you can somehow find that chapter I'm referring to and just read that chapter, oh, it's glorious. I'm telling you, it's glorious. Like I mentioned on Monday, South by Southwest is happening right now in good old Austin, Texas. Paul knows about that. Good old PQ. Austin, Texas, easy. And right there, they are debuting several movies that are coming out this year. They had a screening for Fall Guy, which it's getting a lot of rave reviews coming out of there. South by Southwest. You have Immaculate, the upcoming horror thriller from Sydney Sweeney. And then you have Dev Patel's new Monkey Man action thriller. So a lot of great news on these movies that are coming out this year that are debuting there, especially with Dev Patel, because this is his directing debut. And he has a lovely quote here. It's like he said that the action genre has been abused by the system. You know, a quick buck, mindless shit. I wanted to give it soul, real trauma, real pain. You guys deserve that. I wanted to infuse it with a little bit of culture. And that is something that he said about his new movie coming out, which I've heard is fantastic. So I personally cannot wait for that when it comes out myself. So that wraps up a lot of news I covered this morning. A lot of stuff. And love to hear your feedback, thoughts on everything that was discussed this morning. But now let's get into what I like to call Binge of the Week. Binge of the Week. Binge of the Week. This is the moment I talk about things that I binge during the week. It could be a TV show. It could be two. It could be a bunch of movies or something else. Binge.
I'm gonna come.
All right. So like I stated before, normally this would be a section where I talk about some series that I binged this past week. I didn't get to any. Or I should say I didn't get to finish any just yet. So stay tuned in the next week or two. I'm going to be talking about a lot of stuff that I'm going to be finishing up. But like I also said, yesterday I watched 3 movies yesterday. 3 freaking movies. which is not uncommon. I've done this before, but I wanted to talk about these movies today. One of them, the first movie I watched was Drive Away Dolls. This is the new movie from director Ethan Coen, better known as one half of the Coen brothers. Ethan Coen wrote this movie with his wife, Trisha Cook. And it stars Margaret Qualley, who is the daughter of Annie McDowell. If you remember her. Looks very much like her, too. It's crazy how sometimes when she smiles a certain way, she looks just like her mom. Geraldine Viswanathan. Oh, my God. I just butchered that name. I'm so sorry. Viswanathan. Geraldine Viswanathan, who has been seen in other movies, but is also going to be appearing in the upcoming Thunderbolts movie. Beanie Feldstein is also in this movie, although very briefly. Coleman Domingo is in this movie, and Pedro Pascal is in this movie, but don't get too excited because their roles are very small. Also, we get an appearance by Matt Damon as well. Basically, the premise of this movie, think of it kind of like a Thelma and Louise kind of road trip adventure, but is very centered around these two younger girls who happen to be lesbian. And think of it as a lesbian caper road trip type of adventure. The movie itself felt like an homage and throwback to like those exploitation movies from the 60s and 70s. A lot of trippy moments, a lot of interesting camera choices and editing choices and cuts and transitions. But like I said, centers around these two young women who feel like they need a little change, decide to take a road trip, and it goes haywire because of some business that is being conducted, and they find themselves in the middle of it without even knowing. It's only an hour and 24 minutes, I want to say. It is a very short movie. So short that I do feel like maybe this is something that they could have just shown on Netflix. If I'm to be very completely honest here. Was it an hour and 24? It's short. Maybe shy under an hour 30. Let's just say it like that. I have this to say about it. It's not a great movie. It is very quirky. And once again, I think it just kind of reminds me that maybe I am getting too old for certain types of comedy. Because a lot of the jokes here, it didn't hit me. I would say like maybe 80%, 85% of the jokes I didn't find funny at all. Margaret, for some reason, thought that her character, maybe not her choice, I'm pretty positive that this is maybe Ethan's choice, had this really strong Southern accent. But not just a Southern accent, but like a Southern personality. Like every time she talks to her friend, she's like, "Hey there, baby doll, sugar girl." And, I almost said sweet tits. She doesn't say that. Although it would be fitting because they're both lesbians, right? But I found that to be extremely annoying throughout the whole movie. And Geraldine plays this very like straight-laced, serious personality. It's hinted that she used to work in politics. So just imagine that type of personality. So you have her personality with this very outrageous, very sexual person going on a road trip together, right? There's also a lot of lesbian sex and kissing in this. A lot. Which is fine, but I wasn't expecting to see that much. Did it take away from anything from the movie? No. But I just found it interesting that was a lot of the focus in this movie outside of the main caper. And then when when it's revealed what the whole thing was, I'm just like, are you what? This is what is causing all these problems? And I'm going to spoil it for you now so that you don't have to bother yourself and watch this movie yourself. The main premise here, and the movie starts off with Pedro Pascal holding onto this briefcase, fearing for his life. And as soon as shit hits the fan, he finds himself in trouble, and whoever's looking for that briefcase basically kills him, right? And then we cut on to several months later or something like that. And then now we get introduced to the girls who decide to rent a car, or what they call a drive-away car, because basically it's a one-way trip, which is what they were planning to do, and drive to Tallahassee to meet up with the friend's aunt or grandma or something like that, to spend some time with and get away from all the mess that they're surrounded, because they're kind of living a life that's dull and they needed a change. So you have these goons that's being led by Coleman Domingo looking for this briefcase, finding out that the car that they were supposed to get was taken by somebody else, and now they're on a hunt for this car. And that's where all the hijinks begin, right? AKB in the house, what's up? His devout fans. What are you referring to? I'm curious. Let me know. I'm not sure what you're referencing there. So what's in the briefcase? I'm gonna explain it right now. So they find out what's in the briefcase because when they get to Florida, they catch wind that they're being chased because of this briefcase that they found in their car. Curious about it, one night they decide, or one of them decides to look in it. And how do we know? Well, we know because Marion, played by Geraldine, walks into the room to find Margaret masturbating. Oh no, she didn't walk. She wakes up because they had an intimate night together. They finally realized that they liked each other, and they had a lovely evening. And she wakes up to Margaret masturbating and mentioning that she couldn't help it. She was horny because she didn't get to finish, and used something that she found in the briefcase. So what's in the briefcase? Briefcase had 4 dildos in it. So these guys are going after this briefcase of 4 dildos. Why is it so important? Because apparently the dildos are molds of very important people in very high positions. And the main person who is trying to protect this is Matt Damon's character of Senator Gary Channel, who could one day potentially be running for president. And as I'm saying this out loud, it sounds fucking ridiculous. But that is the premise of the story. So it leads to all of these hijinks, right? And also, not to mention that after sampling the senator's piece, Margaret falls in love with it. So much so, and now I'm saying Margaret, the actress's name, her character name in the movie is Jamie. Jamie fell in love with it. So much so that now Marion wants to try it, and she falls in love with it. So what does Jamie do? She decides to make a mold of that mold so that they could have something to share together. Ain't that sweet? Ain't love grand? So they bribe Matt Damon's character to get some money, to give him, to fork over the dildos. And then he decides he wants to try to kill them. Beanie Feldstein is a cop who was once in a relationship with Jamie, shows up in Florida because she wants to get rid of this dog that they shared, sees Matt Damon approaching them, and then shoots him. So how does the movie end? Jamie and Marion are happily together. They finally meet up with the aunt or grandmother, who's a very religious person. And then Jamie, again, this is the free spirit, accidentally let it out that they're going to Massachusetts because that's where marriage is legal. And movie ends. Also, I should mention that the movie takes place in 1999. So you kind of can understand why things are a little taboo and unheard of at the time. So there you have it. That is that movie. Now, again, Coen brothers, I love their movies. I'm a huge fan of Fargo. I love The Big Lebowski. So when it comes to quirk and all that, of course, I get it. I understand, and I know that's what to expect. But I feel like the quirkiness of this movie was a little bit too much for me. It was a little bit too out there. AKB Mobile, poor guy's glad. Okay, it looks like AKB is actually commenting and replying to stuff I've already spoken about. So he's watching a replay. Video on demand as we speak. So his comments are coming in mad late for that stuff. Star-Lord 7's in the house. How you like them apples? I don't know. I just hear Matt Damon and say that. I think in this movie he would have said, "How do you like these nuts?" Because I mean we are talking about dildos and penises and all. But yeah, that's this movie. And like I said, if you're familiar with the Coen brothers and their quirkiness and their way of filmmaking, you do get to see some of that here, but it is a little bit over the top. And I felt like a lot of it was just way out of left field. It was too strange to be strange in a way. And again, the choice of Margaret Qualley's accent really threw me off. And I don't know, the humor just didn't hit me. And I wonder if people who like this movie are the same people who also like the movie Bottoms Up. Because when I saw that movie too, I didn't understand why people liked that movie. Not a lot of people liked it, but enough people did. So when I had a conversation with Blake about it, we came to the realization that maybe like this humor is for a younger generation that I will no longer be able to understand or get behind. So I wonder if this is the case here too. That this was written maybe for that certain generation in mind. Don't get me wrong, the lesbian stuff did not bother me one bit. I am happy that there's more of that type of representation in movies. But I also felt like it was a little bit too much. Like you didn't have to have it be this crazy, raunchy road trip. But maybe then again, I shouldn't say that. Because last year, one of my favorite comedies from last year was Joyride. And that was like a raunchy road trip kind of romp there too. So why can't they have their own version like that? So yeah, maybe I shouldn't say that. But I think at the end of the day, this movie just wasn't for me. It just didn't hit me the way I was hoping it would. So on Letterboxd, I will give it 2 out of 5 stars. That's just how I felt about it. It's kind of unfortunate because I was really looking forward to this movie. I also felt like the marketing for this movie is very deceptive because they put it on the forefront that you have Pedro Pascal, Colman Domingo in this movie, and they're in the movie. Pedro's in the movie like maybe 5 minutes max. Colman Domingo, if you added up all of his moments in the movie, maybe 10 minutes. You know, Matt Damon, maybe 5 also. So if you're going into this movie really seeing them in this film all throughout, then you are not going to be happy. Like really the movie was just about Margaret Qualley's and Geraldine's characters. That's it. And they're great actresses from what I can see. I'm excited to see Margaret Qualley. I think she's in another movie coming soon that I am looking forward to. Let me pull this up here. What she was attached to something that I was kind of excited for. She was in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. She was also in this movie called Sanctuary, which a lot of people were talking about. I can't pull it up now, but I'm excited to see what else she's going to do in the future. And I mentioned already before, Geraldine, she's going to be in the upcoming Thunderbolts movie, and she has other projects in the works. And I would love to see what else she also has in store for us there too. Star-Lord, I saw the trailer. I think, what's the name of the movie? Drive Away Dolls. That's the movie I'm referring to right now. Yeah, very quirky. Even the trailer itself was very quirky and all. So it's a short watch. So if it happens to show up like on Netflix or whatever, and you're just curious, then by all means, you could check it out. Also, I didn't realize the history behind this movie because I guess this was adapted from a book, and this movie was kind of in the works since 2006 or 2007. So this has been like kind of passed around Hollywood for a while now, which is really interesting. Some of the information I found out when I was reading more information about the movie, when I was getting ready to talk about today. Here I am here, production. Yeah, the film was announced in January of 2007. It was once titled Drive Away Dykes, which is funny because when the movie ends, that's the first time we get a title card and it says Drive Away Dolls, and then a car drives through it and wipes away the dolls and reveals Dykes. So they do pay homage to this original title. And it was originally attached to Allison Anders. Cohen said the tone was similar to the early 70s exploitation romance movies. Yes. Listen to this cast that was attached to this movie before. Selma Blair, Holly Hunter, Christina Applegate, and Chloe Sevigny. That feels like very much the cast you would expect for that time period, for like 2007. And then, again, it's been like kind of in development hell, and then we got what we got now. So there you go. Drive Away Dolls. If you see it, I'm curious to hear what you think about it. And if you didn't see it or were thinking about it, are you going to see it now after what I just said? So let me know. I'm curious. Next movie that I watched this past day, yesterday, is Netflix's Damsel, starring Millie Bobby Brown. And I watched it because I'm always curious as to where Millie Bobby Brown, where her career is going to go once Stranger Things is all said and done. Because, again, referring to child actors, like I mentioned earlier in the stream, it can be very tough for someone to break out of something if they're very known for one thing. We kind of see it with Daniel Radcliffe with Harry Potter. Granted, he's done so much since, but still, I feel like people see him only as Harry Potter. And then now we have Millie Bobby Brown, who's known as her character in Stranger Things. And we've seen her do other things outside of that, no pun intended. You know, she appeared in that Godzilla movie where she basically played the same character, someone who cries a lot and runs away. And then she's done the two Enola Holmes movies, which I haven't watched, but I heard it's very cute and very charming. So that's promising, right? So Damsel was something interesting because I was led to believe that this movie is something that kind of puts a twist on the whole damsel in distress formula, right? Star-Lord, no more movies about dolls. Barbie is enough. Well, it's not those kind of dolls, Star-Lord. I'll say that. But Damsel here. So, first of all, I will say, so Millie Bobby Brown's in this movie. Also, Angela Bassett's in this movie too. I thought I mentioned that. And it is kind of like, you know, a period piece a fantasy movie, takes place in a who knows what time frame or who knows what universe, but it's very much like a King Arthur, like Arthur type of environment where you have knights and royal families, and of course you have dragons and all that stuff. And I will say this, visually, it's amazing what they did with the special effects here. I thought a lot of the visual effects looked decent. There were some moments that did look kind of questionable, but they tried what they tried with what they had, right? And as far as Millie Bobby Brown's acting, look, she does one thing very well. And we've seen her do it over and over again. She's great at crying, screaming, and running away. And we do see her do this a lot in this movie. You know, she's older now, and she's coming into her own as a woman, as an actress, but she definitely has the things that she's good at. And she's good at crying. She's a good crier. She's a good screamer. And she knows how to run away. And she does that a lot. That said, she also does display some action stuff. This movie starts off basically almost like an Ever After storyline, where she comes from a very poor village. They need money. An opportunity arises where she can marry a prince from a very rich family in exchange for services and kind of help to the village that she comes from. But there's a twist. And I will say this, I figured out the twist 20 minutes into the movie, which I hate when that happens for myself, but it happens. And I figured it out. And everything I kind of thought about and I called happened. It was very predictable, unfortunately, for someone like me. Then again, I'm someone who watches a lot of movies. So if you pick up on certain formulas or certain ways that the director hints at things, then you kind of know what to look for. So the major twist here, and again, spoilers, that's what I do here. I talk freely about movies, and if you don't like it, tough shit. But the movie started with these guys. You could tell it there's a king and his men fighting against a dragon. All of the men die, and we see the king face to face with a dragon at the end of it. And then that's when we cut to years, centuries later. Right? This very rich and royal family are descendants of this king. And once they needed someone to marry the prince, they approached, the Elodie is the character's name. That's Millie Bobby Brown's character. They approached her family with a proposition. And it felt like one of those, like I said, Ever After type of storylines, where you have girl coming from a very poor village, but yet you have a sense that she can handle her own, being presented to this royal family, and she's supposed to be all demure and kind of what is expected a princess should be like. But then she has kind of like a quirkiness to her, a wit to her. And there's a lot of cute back and forth between her and the prince, who they're meeting for the first time. And then he's finding out that, oh, she likes adventure. She knows how to ride horses. And they're getting along very smoothly. Angela Bassett plays a stepmom. She catches wind that maybe there's some nefarious things going on behind the scenes, because Robin Wright, who's also in this movie, plays the queen mother of the prince that is getting married off, right? And she kind of she hints on this thing where it's like, look, I know this is probably very overwhelming to you guys, but certain situations happen. You had a need for funding and support for your village. I had a need for my son to get married. And this is the transaction we're in. This does not mean that we have room for extended family. Ooh, this. So that's kind of raises some red flags. And, Angela's it's like, oh, be careful, think twice and all that. The dad knows what's up. He's just not refusing to talk about it because he just thinks of his village and he needs to protect his village. And Elodie also has the same mindset too. I got to make my sacrifices for the village that I come from. Star-Lord, I got shit for saying spoilers on live streams. What was the context of that? I'm just curious. Was it your own live stream or were you just on other live streams spoiling stuff in the comments? I'm just curious. So they get married and then they have this interesting kind of tradition. And this is when I started to figure things out. So as they're enjoying their time at the castle, one night, Elodie looks out on the balcony, and in the far distance, she sees like light going into a mountaintop. Earlier, she also noticed that she saw somebody else, another lady, in another tower. They share a brief smile together, and oh, that's interesting. There's another like nice young lady here too. Then when they were out gallivanting, her and the guy, and it's like, hey, I noticed something last night. Light coming from this mountain. And it's like, oh, you saw that? Oh yeah, we have weird traditions as a family. 3, in fact. And boom, that's when I kicked it in. Oh, I see what's happening here. Again, this is just 20 minutes into the movie, and I was figuring it out. So here's what's going to happen. This family is descendants of the dragon, of the king who fought the dragon. King made a deal with the dragon. Don't kill me. I'll give you anything you want. Dragon's like, well, I'm going to need you to make some sacrifices. So you have to make sacrifices to me every year or whatever the case is. And if you don't, I'm going to destroy your whole kingdom. And then, lo and behold, gets married. She turns out to be the sacrifice, unbeknownst to her. This guy throws her into this cavern, and she's left there to defend herself. And then she finds out that this happened to multiple women. So to add to that whole premise is the reason why the dragon was mad at the king is because for some reason, and maybe to protect the village and maybe to protect his kingdom, he came across 3 dragon eggs, which just hatched. So he ordered his men to kill the babies. Mama Dragon's not happy and attacks these guys. So the deal that they made is that for every daughter you have to make sure you have 3. You need to sacrifice them. Maybe once a year, every 5 years, 10 years, don't know. That's the deal there. And you find out about this stuff as we are with Millie Bobby Brown exploring this cave that she's now stuck in. Right? Because she comes across drawings on the wall, little messages left from the previous girls that were kind of sacrificed. And then she came across this kind of mural that maybe the dragon put together of the 3 eggs with the 3 dead dragon babies. And I don't know if it was through a series of flashbacks or maybe the past ghosts speaking to her and revealing all the info, but she learns all about that stuff, right? So it's easy to see that, okay, now we are in this position where Millie's character is just trying to survive and get out of there. And she does. But then something brings her back. And this is something I called before because I'm like, all right, girl we saw before, that's number 1. Millie is number 2, and her sister is going to be number 3. And Millie even comes across that girl in the cave, burnt up from the dragon fire. So when Millie escapes, which she does, and again, a lot of foreshadowing here because we find out that Millie loves making mazes, and the cave is like a maze. And one of the girls drew a maze of the cave on the wall, and she's all of a sudden she's like genius. She's figuring all this stuff out. It's like, oh, if I go here and there, I can make my way out, and this and that. Her father with his men show up in the cave because now he realized I messed up. I done fucked up. And I am here now to rescue my daughter. And he came in through the cave on this very elaborate rope. Earlier in the movie, we found out that the stepmom's father was the most prolific or proficient rope maker of all the world, of all the kingdoms. So the rope was made by the mom, so you know this rope is going to be sturdy and resilient. That's how Millie's character escaped, was by the rope. And when everything looks like it's in the clear, the dragon, of course, is going nuts because, like, where is she? She's gone. So I'm having a hissy fit. Robin Wright's Queen character is like, oh, that's it. I knew that girl was trouble from the day I met her. I'll fix this. And like I guessed, takes the sister. They stab the mom. And now the sister's a new sacrifice. And the way they trick the dragon into thinking that these are real daughters and they're royal blood is that they do part of the ritual is they cut each other's hands and they bond their bloods together, hence royal blood. Whatever. So now the sister's in there. Millie is escaped. She feels relieved. She sees the mom. I was like, they took your sister. And all of a sudden, without even hesitating, I'm going to go save her. And now it goes from a survival type of movie into a revenge movie. And without any hesitation, now she finds her way back in the cave and gathering up all these resources and things that she's learned during her time in there. So the way that she was able to light her way through, she is now MacGyvering her way to it. She's like, dun, dun, dun. There's this montage of her setting these things up, getting herself ready, using all of these things to kind of set like a timer, like a distraction. All of a sudden, she's like this brilliant strategist. She's like, oh, you go, Millie Bobby Brown. Save your sister. And she formulates this plan where she distracts the dragon, and she even like covers herself up in this like very nasty smelling stuff so that the dragon doesn't smell her. So she sets up this timer, booby trap goes off. Dragon's like, there she is. I knew I would get her to come get you. Dragon goes off. Millie shows up. Sister, we need to get out of here. Sister cannot walk because she got injured. And then Dragon is like, wait a minute, I've been duped. I need to go back. And now there's a confrontation between Millie and the dragon. Like, oh, you tried to trick me. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to make you pay. I'm going to make your people pay. And she's like, that's not my people, yo. I was not the same person who did all this stuff to you. I understand. Your poor babies were killed. But I had nothing to do with that. I'm not royalty. You're being tricked, girl. They're tricking you. They're marrying people and bonding the royal bloodlines together and tricking you. It's like, I don't believe you. You're just saying that. It's all a ruse. And they have a little confrontation. And Millie all of a sudden is like now this master swordsman. She's like doing these moves, stabbed the dragon in the eye, was once in the hands. Oh, she is just badass. She's like Lara Croft. And then her keen sense, almost like Enola Holmes kicking in. She sees, oh, wait a minute. I'm kind of stuck. I have no more weapon. This dragon's still around kicking and wants to kill me. But the way the air is flowing right here, it's kicking back up and going backwards. Oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to bait the dragon to breathe its fire breath at me, and I'm going to duck at the last minute, and it's going to go right back at her. And that's what happens. She's a crafty one. And then dragon's like on the ground, burnt up. Finish it. Finish it. Kill me. And they do this, the typical trope where, ding, I'm not going to do it. How many times have you seen that in movies? So she decides to, the way she found herself healing herself is that there's these creatures in the cave that help heal you because they eat away at the wounds. How that happens, I don't know. It's fantasy. Grabs all of these things, puts it on the dragon. I'm going to heal you. And they form an alliance. They go back to the kingdom. They're already marrying off the prince to some other person. All of a sudden, there's another ceremony. This old poor girl is getting married. And she shows up all badass. Like, oh my God, it's Elodie. The prince is like, trust me, I didn't want to do this. And like, oh yeah, I don't believe you. And she's like, and the prince, Robin Wright, poor Princess Buttercup turned into this evil woman. And she's like, oh, you can't stop us. We know what we got to do. She's like, oh yeah, guess again. Dragon shows up. She's like, I am now Khaleesi. I am the queen of the dragon. And she walks away and dragon just goes to town on this kingdom. Whole kingdom, castle's burning down, and you see Millie Bobby Brown doing the action walk right outside. I did this. It kind of reminds me of that movie that Chris Hemsworth's wife, I forget her name, but she was also in the Fast and Furious movies, when she did her own solo action movie on Netflix. I was getting a lot of the same vibes. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. So the movie basically ends with the mom taking care now of the kingdom, getting all the help needed. The sister is there. And Millie Bobby Brown is now taking a ship, going back to the original kingdom where she came from to help them out. But this time now she has a dragon with her. She has her own dragon friend. End of story, end of movie. Ta-da! And that's how Damsel ends. So look, for what it's worth, it was entertaining. Whether it was entertaining for good or bad reasons, it's up to you to decide that. But for me, I found it entertaining. A lot of typical tropes that we've seen. Like I said, Millie Bobby Brown is good for what she does. It's nice seeing her do a little bit more. I definitely do want to see what else she can do. And she's not afraid to go out there. She's not afraid to put herself in these action moments, in these action sequences. But she's very good at running, crying, and screaming. And if you look at all of her roles, she's basically been doing that over and over again. But now at least we could see she could really go and do some action bits too. And I would love to see her maybe explore that more. But I would also love to see just her maybe do something more serious, more dramatic. Angela Bassett's accent was weird. It didn't feel like it fit. And Robin Wright does a really good villainy type of character. Like I said, Princess Buttercup turned bad. That's basically how I saw it. And I will say, like I said, there's a lot of special effects, a lot of green screen. For sure. But for what it's worth, for a Netflix movie, it was pretty decent. And for that, I give it 3 out of 5 stars. Didn't love it, but also didn't hate it. So that's Damsel. If you've seen it, let me know. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it. If you haven't, are you going to see it now after hearing this? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments. Let's see. Sorry, I'm catching up now on the chat here. Oh, you were reacting to a premiere of H2O? Well, that sounds like a long time ago. I said, sorry, I wasn't trying to troll or anything. Hey, it happens. Starlord also says, seen it once, seen it all. This is nothing. I have Charlie's Angels Full Throttle on repeat as background noise. That's an interesting choice. And AKB Mobile, well, y'all wanted her to be more than a runaway crybaby. Are you talking about Millie Bobby Brown? I'm curious. I'm just curious what if you're caught up to the stream yet or not. To where we are currently live, because I talked about a lot of things this morning so far, so I'm just curious about that. All right, last movie I want to talk about that I watched yesterday, and like I said, something that I want to now feature on a weekly basis is my Japanese film of the week. You heard about it at the Oscars. It was Japanese nominee for International Feature Film. It also, I had a chance to watch it, or I had my chance to watch it at New York Film Festival last year, but I missed it. I unfortunately was sick and I couldn't go watch the screening of this movie. And it's called Perfect Days. It's a movie from Wim Wenders. It stars legendary actor Koji Yakusho, Tokyo Imoto, Min Tanaka, Ayoi Yamada, and a lot of other actors there. Sayuri Ishikawa, who is known for more of the older films from back in the day. But Koji is known for a lot of movies like 13 Assassins, other well-known Japanese film out there. And this was one of my most anticipated Japanese movies that came out last year that I've been dying to see. It was out limitedly here in New York, and just each time I just didn't have a chance to see it. But like I mentioned, last year produced a lot of very good Japanese movies. And I'm not just talking about Godzilla Minus One or Boy and the Heron, but Evil Does Not Exist is another movie that I really loved from last year. That's the movie that won Best Film at the Asia Film Festival. Another movie is Monster, that also came out last year. That was so well done. Monster was directed by, sorry, I'm just pulling up all the, Hirokazu Koreeda, who is a very well-known, great Japanese director. One of my favorite directors out there, along with Takashi Miike. Evil Does Not Exist, that came out last year, was directed by Ryusuke Hamaguchi, who in previous years was also known for the movie Drive My Car back in 2021. I believe he won, this was the year that he won director for that movie, or this movie won International Feature Film, I forget. My memory really sucks, but he's another favorite director of mine. So there's a lot of these directors that are very well known, but are not necessarily well known to American audiences. Wim Wenders is also well known in the indie circuit, more like the art housey type of films. And it was nice to see him direct a movie like this, because he is not known for a Japanese film, really. He is a German filmmaker, and he usually does more films in Germany, in Europe. And I may be wrong, but I think this is his first time directing a Japanese movie. And the movie is all in Japanese. So he must know Japanese for him to direct a movie like this. Real quick, AKB, yes, I started your stream in the past, was live for Damsel. Yes, was talking about Millie Bobby Brown. Okay. Well, I don't know if I would say we all wanted her to be more than a runaway crybaby. I think we definitely wanted to see more of what her range is capable of. I feel like we were just given that, especially with just, Stranger Things and everything. But it just turns out that a lot of things that she was involved in, that's all she ever does, really, is cry and run and scream. There has to be moments where she screams. Like I said, Godzilla, she did that. And in Enola Holmes, I don't think she cries or screams as much, but she definitely does do a lot of running. So yeah, so I think we're just all curious about her range and what else is she capable of, right? So, but back to Perfect Days. So Perfect Days is what I like to call a slice of life type of movie. Basically, you're following the main character, Hirayama, played by Koji. You're just following his everyday life. This character is, lack of a better term, a janitor. In Tokyo, the one thing I love about Japan is that they have a lot of access to public restrooms. No problems ever finding a public restroom. And several years ago, before the pandemic, they started implementing a lot of these very elaborate public restrooms all around parts of Tokyo. And I don't know if they're corporate owned. A lot of things that happen in Japan, in Tokyo, are mainly corporate owned. Even the railways. Every line is owned by a certain corporation. It's up to the responsibility of that corporation to maintain that line. So I'm pretty sure there's a certain amount of corporations that own these public restrooms. So it's up to them to help maintain them. So he works for one of these companies where he goes around to public restrooms and he cleans them, maintains them. He has a partner with him who's like a younger person. But we follow the everyday life of this guy. And he is a very simple guy. He lives in a very small apartment. Again, you think, oh, Japanese, they all live in small apartments. But I mean, in Japanese terms, this is a very small apartment. He doesn't have a lot of things, and he's also very analog. So when I say that, it's like even in his car, he still has a tape deck. At home, he has a radio with a cassette deck, and he has a huge collection of cassette tapes. That's his form of media. He reads a lot of books, so he has a lot of books all over. And he has a certain routine. He'll go to the job. He sees certain people, like he has this connection with one homeless guy who likes to perform wherever like on the street. But he's a homeless guy. And like when he goes to a certain place for his job, he always sees this guy. So it's like, oh, there he is. Okay. He likes to eat at a shrine. That's where he goes for lunch. He loves plants and he maintains them. He goes to the bookstore at least once a week, buys a book. He's very friendly with the lady who owns the bookstore. It's like a used bookstore. He's reading like Vonnegut and, very prolific writers. He frequents a bar that is run by this one older lady who's a singer. And it looks like it's a hangout for like older men to hang out. Not like a hostess bar, but she could kind of be looked upon as like an elderly hostess person that provides drink and food to these older gentlemen that just hang out there. So he has his routine, and he's very happy about it, and he enjoys life. Every morning, he wakes up, brushes his teeth, goes outside. He looks up into the sky with a big smile on his face, gets his coffee from the vending machine, and drives. And that's what he does, like basically every morning. If he's not working, then he's going to the laundry to do his laundry. He takes pictures still on an old-fashioned camera. So one of his routines is that he goes to a small shop that still develops photos. He gets a new roll of film in exchange for the used roll of film that he uses. And he takes a lot of black and white photos, and he just like keeps them in these canisters that he labels them with the month on it. And most of the pictures are just him taking pictures of the trees that he sees at the shrine. But he has an interesting interaction with the younger guy that he works with, who's a little bit of a kind of loose cannon. And he doesn't talk much, the older guy. And, the younger guy makes sure to mention that a lot. It's like, not like you ever listen to me or you ever say anything. But one day he has a date with somebody and his, scooter breaks down. So he begs and pleads to use the van of the guy. The guy agrees, but he's with them. The girl's a little flaky, but likes the cassettes that are in the car. So there's like a little bond going on between the young girl and the older guy. Not in a sexual way, but just in, I appreciate what you like kind of way. And then the younger guy is broke. He really, really desperately wants to take her out on a date, but can't afford it. Comes up with this crazy plot about taking his cassette tapes and selling them because in Japan, that's a new thing now. It's coming back, and he could make a lot of money on these things. One tape he had was going to go for like $120. And of course, the guy's like, no, I'm not going to do this. What are you, crazy? These are my things. So he ends up just giving him a couple of dollars. Here you go. Take the girl out on a date. And during this whole exchange, the guy brings up the fact that, don't you understand how it is to be lonely? Even though I can't afford it, all I would want to do is just be in love. Like, what kind of world do we live in if we can't be in love because we simply can't afford it? Right? And he looks at the guy and is like, you're always alone. You must be lonely. And then it makes you think as you're watching this guy through his everyday life, like he has this routine and all, but he is always alone. And he finds ways to connect with people in his own way. Like I said, he sees a homeless guy. That is a connection. They acknowledge each other. During one of his jobs, someone secretly left a note in the bathroom, which is just tic-tac-toe. So it's like tic-tac-toe with a circle. And he's like, all right, I'll partake. And every time he goes back, a new section is filled in. So here is his sense of connection. At the shrine, he came across this lady who also enjoys lunch there. But they never talk, they just look at each other. So that's another connection. He has his favorite tree at the shrine that he looks at every day and takes pictures of every time he's there. He goes to that bar. He has that kind of like that little connection with the lady, the server. The bookstore lady, that's another connection. The guy who runs the photo shop, that's another connection. But they're not like long-lasting connections. These are people that he just knows and sees on a weekly, bi-weekly basis. And then one day, he gets thrown into a loop. Or he gets thrown out of a loop. Young guy quits. Says, I'm not going to work anymore. Thank you for everything. So the guy has to take over all the shifts. He gets frustrated. He calls the company. Said, I am only doing this today. I'm not going to do this ever again. And you can kind of tell this is maybe like his first time speaking up or speaking out. And then the next day, they get a replacement right away. And he feels proud. Like he's like, hey, I did something. Right? And then he gets visited by his niece. Just shows up out of nowhere. And his place is not suitable for like more than 2 people. So she stays over, sleeps where he usually sleeps, and he's sleeping in the kitchen. But he's trying so hard not to disturb her. And she's like, can I go to work with you today? At first he was like hesitant. It's like, all right, fine. So the niece is also seeing now how he lives his everyday life. And you can kind of tell like the niece feels sorry for him, but also sees the pride he has in doing what he does. And that's how we find out that there is kind of a separation between him and his sister, who's Denise's mom. We find out that Denise ran away because there was some disagreement that they had. So there's a new bond being formed here because they haven't seen each other for a while. So much so that he didn't even recognize her when she showed up. And then he feels how it is to be with somebody, just to have company. And he really likes it. You could see that he's enjoying it. He's enjoying that she is experiencing what he does. She even offers to help him on some of the jobs that he goes on. You know, she's learning more about him. He's learning more about her. She's being introduced to his taste in music and cassette tapes. They had this funny exchange about she's wondering if she could find the same music on Spotify. And he's like, I'm not familiar with that shop. And they have like a nice laugh. It's like, no, Spotify's not a shop. You know, so there's, again, another connection, but this is a more important connection because it's family at this point. Then one night, the sister shows up in this very extravagant car. She even has a driver. So you could kind of see that, oh, she comes from money. Okay. This is where the disconnect is. Somehow along the way, there has been a disconnect or a rift between the two, or something that led the lives leading to different directions. And you can see that the sister feels bad for her brother. She's like, is it true that you're a janitor? Like you clean toilets? And you can see he's very hesitant about it, but he smiles as proudly as he can. Yeah, that's what I do. Then she briefly mentions the father, how he is in a state that he's starting to not recognize people as often and wondering if he's going to visit him. He says no. So you could kind of tell, okay, there's a kind of, again, disconnect between him and the father. They had a falling out, which could possibly have led to the falling out between the brother and sister. But you could see that there's this thing inside him that really misses her. And as they're saying goodbye, he lounges at her with this giant hug as he's teary-eyed. And you could tell she feels really bad and she feels like she wants to do something. But she chooses not to and then drives away. And you could tell he's very emotional about the whole situation. And then we just go back to him living his everyday life. Smiling at the sky when he leaves the room, when he leaves his apartment. Listening to his music. Getting his coffee from the vending machine. And the last things we see when the movie ends is him driving in the car, listening to music. And him having this giant smile on his face. And it's such an amazingly touching movie. Because I feel like we all have felt that at one way or another. And we know people who are like that. We often feel like, you know, it's hard to be alone. It's easy to be lonely. But for some, maybe that's enough. As long as they appreciate life. As long as they appreciate the things that they do every day. The connections that they have, however way they have it, may be enough. There's another moment where one day he goes to the job and he doesn't see the homeless guy. And you could see he feels lost. He's like, where is this guy? He's usually here. Later on in the day, he sees the guy walking somewhere else. And he stops in the middle of traffic in this car. He stops to finally see the guy. And he's like, there he is. I needed to see him. He goes back to the bar one day. And he was a little early, so it wasn't open. And a guy shows up to greet the hostess. And he hears a little bit of the conversation, like, oh, what brings you here? And then when they go in, he goes inside and sees that she's hugging him like very hard. Oh, he's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have seen that. I shouldn't be here. So let me get out of here. But you could also tell like maybe something inside it was like, oh man, she's maybe with somebody, whatever. And then very randomly, like he decides to get some beer and some cigarettes. He hangs out by the water to kind of just relax, chill out. And the guy shows up. I don't know how he found him. By the way, public drinking in Japan is also allowed to a certain extent. Again, something I love about that. And they decide to hang out a little bit together. And he explains like, yeah, I'm her ex-husband, but I'm already remarried. However, I have cancer. And I felt like I needed to go back and apologize for everything I did wrong. And you can kind of see it's like a moment of reflection. And then he's like, you should take care of her. And he's like, no, there's nothing like that going on. And he's like, she needs people like you. And then they have this very deep conversation about, have you ever wondered if shadows, if they overlap, the shadow gets darker? You could feel like this is coming from like a dark space inside of him. And, Koji Hirayama says like, let's test it out. Let's go over here. You stand there, I'll stand here. What do you see? It looks the same to me. Like, I don't know, it looks kind of darker. And then they kind of have this playful banter back and forth. And then they play shadow tag as if they were like little kids. It's another connection that he's made with somebody. Albeit probably very brief. He's probably never going to see this guy again. But it's a moment in life that he's going to cherish. And it's just so sweet and endearing. And again, when you think about it, anyone at any point in their lives can relate to something like this. And that's one of the things I love about Japanese film, is that there are many films that I've seen in the past from Japan that display kind of the human emotion and the human feeling just by watching everyday people doing everyday things. And then sometimes a lot of us don't really think about that. It's very easy for us to not pay attention to those things. But here you have a guy that, not the greatest job in the world, cleans up after everyone's shit. No pun intended. Or maybe pun intended. But he takes pride in what he does. And he has these routines that bring joy to his life. He experiences to be outside. He appreciates nature. He appreciates that he's alive. And these moments that he shares during his week is what he looks forward to the most. And that made me immediately think about like my mom. Because older people, when they get older, that's what they face and that's what they experience. Yeah, they may no longer travel around the world. They may not have a job that they go to every day. But they create these moments in their everyday week that they cherish. And they may be still with their husband and wife, or maybe they're separated and they're living alone. And as a son, as people outside, that's all we see is them being alone. And I'm sure to a certain extent they are. But they still have these connections that they formulated for themselves. And maybe for them, that's enough. For him, it was enough that he can go on with his everyday life smiling as big and brightly as he can. Even though he may have been reminded every now and then on how it is to be around people and be with some people that you love and who love you back. And it was just very, very sweet. Again, someone who is just very simple in his life. And it kind of makes you also think too, like maybe simplicity is all you need. You don't need drama. You don't need craziness. Because drama is so easy to be introduced into anyone's life at any given time. How you treat that piece of drama, that's on you. Or how much drama you allowed to be around you, that's on you. He chooses not to be involved. Sounds like there's a lot of drama on his family side, but he chooses to separate himself from all of that. And at the end of the day, it is what it is. And he just lives his life as happily as he can. And you have to admire that in a way. Very sweet, very touching film. And definitely worth a watch if you have a moment. So out of 5 stars, I gave it a 4, or I'll be giving it a 4 on 5 from Letterboxd. It's not a full 5 because there are moments that drag a little bit. And when he sleeps, he goes into this dream state, or they kind of show like a dream state. It basically is like a recap of things that he's seen from the day in black and white, kind of like how he sees his pictures that he takes. It's bits of the memories from the day just being implanted in his long-lasting memory. That's how I took it. But for some, that might be kind of like a little bit out there. I love the music that they played throughout. Very classic, like 60s, 70s type of music. Definitely worth a watch. It's not available, unfortunately, on any streaming right now. Hopefully it will be soon. And once it is, I highly recommend you check it out. Again, I will preface it by saying you will have to watch subtitles, but there's not a lot of dialogue throughout. I know some people hate watching subtitles, but I have to put it out there. But it's definitely worth watching. Very, very sweet movie. I really, really enjoyed it. All right. Catching up with some of the chat. Star-Lord, she's probably a scream queen of movies nowadays, good for horror films. I could see her do that. Absolutely. It'll be nice to kind of see her tackle like a horror, like a straight up horror film. AKB, not long-lasting connection, but consistent connections. Interesting. Star-Lord, so relatable, it's a little frustrating. AKB Mo sounds like a nice slice of life movie. Can you place the list of this movie in the pinned comments later? You want me to place like the name of the movie or where to watch it? Like I said, right now, I think it's only available on video on demand. Star-Lord, still, it's a bit difficult to take too seriously with John Cena in the background. Right? I didn't even think about that as I was going on. I know. It's like here I am talking very seriously about a movie that's very touching and endearing, and I have this crazy guy behind me. Totally forgot about that. Oh well. Still, I mean everything I said and every sentiment I still mean. Oh God, that's hilarious. Oh well, it is what it is. I'll just drive into the sunset with a giant smile on my face. And that's what I'll do for this morning. So I think I'm going to call it here. Thank you so much for tuning in this morning. Thank you so much for watching. Again, if you haven't done so yet, please hit that like or dislike. If you watch me for this long, I hope you like me. I will be back again Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. No real major movies coming out this week, but I'm going to try to see if I could see that new Kristen Stewart movie, Love Lies Bleeding. I'm very curious about that movie. But if I don't get to watch that before Friday, I'm sure I'll have stuff to talk about for sure. Star-Lord 7, costumes are important. Always remember. That is true. Always remember. Costumes, whether or not they're meant to be costumes or not, are extremely important. So don't forget. I hope to catch you all again on Friday. Enjoy your Wednesday. Enjoy the rest of your week leading to the weekend. If I don't see you, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. But hopefully I will see you. Big shout out again to Star-Lord, AKB Mobile, and PQ from earlier. And if you're watching on the replay, thank you for watching. I'm going to head on out. Until next time, stay cool, stay classy, stay safe. Peace out, y'all. Bye-bye. What's up, John Cena? Stop looking! Stop looking at him!